We're talking about $1 million Omega candles.
It's all happening. It's just a matter of time. It's impossible that Michael Saylor gets 10% of the supply. At these levels, he's going to get 10%. Like, that's just ridiculous.
Bitcoin's become like a stable coin. The volatility's really decreased tremendously. What's the deal with that?
I think the alternative to fixing it is a debt jubilee, a reset, a great fiat reset. We're so early.
I know, you always tell me, you told me that earlier this year.
Funding mechanisms, I think, for Bitcoin Core are kind of a bit off. Developers get grants to work on whatever they feel like working on.
Oh, wait, are you going down this rabbit hole?
If you want.
Where are the grants coming from, Samson? Yeah, welcome to another episode of Simply Bitcoin IRL. We're here in the beautiful Lugano, Switzerland, during the Plan B Forum, and I'm here with a dear friend, Samson Mow. How you doing?
Thank you, Nico.
Good to see you.
Great to be here.
So, Samson, I want to talk to you about Jan 3, because, that's your thing. But I recently found out that I'm having another daughter, and her due date is Jan 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats.
It's a coincidence, happenstance, maybe,
Destiny.
Destiny. That's a good way of putting it. So, yeah, man, that's what I wanted to start it off with.
Nice.
Just rip off the Band-Aid.
Good news.
Right. But anyways, so you guys have developed a fantastic wallet, which I'm a big fan of. I've been using it, downloaded immediately when you guys released it, the Aqua Wallet. And could you describe it to everybody? Why is it unique? There's so many Bitcoin wallets out there. What differentiates the Aqua Wallet with the rest of the Bitcoin wallets?
I think there's a few differentiating factors. One is our base is a liquid wallet. So Liquid, as you know, is a Bitcoin sidechain launched by Blockstream originally. Dr. Adam Back's thing, his idea largely. And we use Liquid as the foundation. So I think there are many cool things in Aqua, but the main practical thing is you can use Lightning very easily with Aqua because the base is swapping from Liquid Bitcoin to Lightning. So we kind of use Lightning as an interoperability layer, but the basis of it is Liquid Bitcoin. And I think this solves some of the problems from non-custodial Lightning wallets where you have to do channel management and whatnot, or you outsource it to LSP. But this gives you the best combination of privacy and ease of use because you have a strong foundation. You're not subject to fee spikes on the base Bitcoin network as if you were running your own Lightning node. So that's a big improvement in usability of Lightning, I think. Or either you go to a full custodial model of some sorts. The other differentiating factor, I think, is we are the only Bitcoin wallet that is really focused on stablecoins as well. And I like to say that as a whole, Bitcoin wallets have lost market share to altcoin wallets because they've embraced stablecoins. You look at any Ethereum, Tron wallet or whatever, they always have Tether in there. And we have it front and center. You have Tether. You can swap from Liquid Tether into other chains. And I think it's just an underserved market that people don't really seem to care about. But I believe if you want mass adoption, you cannot ignore stablecoins. By and large, people are building wallets just for Bitcoiners that are already orange filled and they already have Bitcoin. And they're not addressing people that want a stable currency, like a dollar value token, but don't yet understand Bitcoin. So I think we're kind of bridging that gap. And so far, I think we're proving out that the model, the mission is right because two of our biggest user bases are in Argentina and Brazil.
Yeah, and I want to focus on that, right? Because again, I think you guys built a wallet based on what the market is signaling. Because I think Bitcoiners had this initial interpretation of Bitcoin where they believed, and in a way they're correct, because I ultimately believe that stable coins are a bridge to Bitcoin, right? But in the developing worlds, people are not so concerned about, saving. They're really concerned about just getting by, living day to day. They don't have the financial privilege that we have in the West. And that is a big reason as to why stablecoins are so popular, right? And not having, a stablecoin implementation in a Bitcoin wallet actually pushes people away from Bitcoin and into altcoins instead versus, the way that I see it, and perhaps, I'll get heat about this from Bitcoiners is, stable coins are your spending money and Bitcoin is your saving money that you're never supposed to spend, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what you guys tapped into, and I think that's why you guys are experiencing the success that you're experiencing.
Yeah, it's also utility. Like you can just do a lot of things in Aqua, just downloading it and putting Bitcoin in. You can swap from Bitcoin to liquid Bitcoin, then swap to liquid Tether, and then on both rails, layer 2 Bitcoin and stablecoins, you can swap out to other things like Lightning. And maybe we'll do to RGB on layer 2 as well. But we're just focused on giving utility. And we also recently opened up the beta for the Dolphin card, which is a prepaid Visa card that you can load with all those assets. And because Liquid has confidential transactions, I think it's the most private solution. So you can register with an email, load it with Liquid USDT or Liquid Bitcoin, and you have the best privacy on the market.
Yeah. And you come from a gaming background, right, Samson? It has any of those experiences what you picked up back then? I think we just saw a wild Bevan dolphin. That was pretty crazy. But you come from a wild, you come from a gaming background. Has any of that influenced the UI of Aqua?
I think so. So I've done a lot of mass market games. So there was a Smurfs game I built at Ubisoft, which was
That's so cool.
It was like one of the biggest Facebook games. Like, you remember social gaming kind of took off in 2009-10. So we built the Smurfs game, and we launched it alongside the Smurfs movie, and we got to 10 million users. So my background is making games, but not just games, but consumer level games that people can use and play. Average people, your mom, your dad, your grandpa, grandma. And I think I try to bring some of those accessibility lessons to the Bitcoin space, because our goal is not to make a really great wallet that, I don't know, Adam Back will use, because he can, run his own node, set up his own Lightning node, and do everything by command line. Our goal is to get the next billion people into Bitcoin. And again, like, stablecoins have opened up the market. Tether has 500 million users now, and we should be leveraging that to bring them all to Bitcoin. So we want to make something that anyone can use. Like, you can just send Bitcoin. It works very simple, minimalist UI, not too cluttered, and focusing on the core things, Bitcoin and stablecoins.
Yeah. I think that's something that, Bitcoiners forgot, right? Because I come from the era, I'm an Electrum junkie, right? I love it. But like, that UI is, I love them. I love those guys. And for me, it makes perfect sense, and I understand it inherently, but it's not something that I think someone could just pick up and use, right? So I think the key for mass adoption, which is one of your missions, right?
Yeah.
And your team's missions, is making the user experience easy enough that you can just pick up and say, oh, I'm just, just pressing a couple buttons and I get to use money.
Yeah. And also structuring it in a certain way. So we have a Bitcoin price at the top. We show Bitcoin labeled as your savings account. Like we talked about, we want people to understand that Bitcoin is your savings account. And then your spending accounts are, layer 2 and Tether. So we think people understand that stablecoins are for spending, but having Bitcoin at the top is a really big differentiator from a lot of the altcoin wallets. I mean, they're going to put like every single altcoin, and people are largely using it for Tether. So maybe they're going to start to get into altcoins that way. But for us, it's pushing people to swap up the stack to liquid Bitcoin and then to Bitcoin. Another thing that Ven BTC Sessions did is he's using it to aggregate too. So there's so much cool things you can do with this very minimal product. So he just gets payments in liquid Bitcoin, and when he gets in a big enough UTXO, he'll swap it all to Bitcoin. So he uses Aqua kind of as an aggregator.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I think, again, that you're hiding a lot of the complexities behind a UI. So the user, they're just looking at it like a regular smegular Bitcoin wallet. But in reality, it has a lot of a very complex functionality that's working behind the scenes. But I think that's the key to technology, right? Making it seem like magic, making it seem flawless.
Yeah. One goal is that we have sort of a non-custodial Venmo. Like, we want to deliver that Venmo-like clean UI and experience, but it's all self-custodial. It's all your own funds, and the swaps are largely atomic swaps. I think some of the USDT swaps are not trustless or trust minimized, but a lot of the liquid swaps are.
Yeah. And where do you think we are in the adoption curve, in the mass adoption curve?
We're so early.
I know you always tell me, you told me that earlier this year, but it's hard. I guess it's hard. It's not hard to believe. Like the logical part of my brain is saying, yeah, we're super early. And then the emotional side of my brain is saying, no, we're not early.
Well, I see different people understand things differently. So I think Saylor also knows we're early, but I believe he understands it's ending soon.
Mhm.
That's why he is buying. He's like, I'll buy the tops.
Yeah.
When he has the capital, he'll deploy it.
Yeah.
It's not about, okay, I'll wait a bit, because he sees that urgency. But another good indicator is, why are we early? Because we have DATs, or digital asset treasury companies, that are buying Ethereum. Like, why would any rational person or investment committee authorize something like that, where you're buying something that has 70% pre-mine, is largely controlled by the guys that launched the ICO, and one of the DATs is owned by one of the guys that launched the token. It's a sign that we are really early.
Yo, I want to tell you about the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack, bitcoinwell.com. What makes Bitcoin Well different? What makes it unique? It's an automatic self-custody Bitcoin on-ramp. What does that mean? That means that when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos, because after all, self-custody is the revolution. By the way, if you go to bitcoinwell.com/simply, as soon as you make your first purchase, you get 3 opportunities to win up to 1 million Satoshis just for signing up and buying a little bit of Bitcoin. Seems like a win-win. What are you waiting for? Go to bitcoinwell.com/simply today. Let's talk about where, Bitcoin is and its current history, right? The ETF approval happened last year, January of 2024. You had the embracement of Bitcoin by the current administration in the United States. These are things that we could have never have imagined 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We literally would have been laughed out of the room, right? And now it's all happening. Like, we are winning. I posted this the other day. I said, we won. Now it's just a matter of waiting.
Yeah.
That's really how I'm seeing it. But simultaneously, with that comes kind of like a change in market structure in Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't really behaving like it has in previous cycles, where you have this trickle up phenomenon that's been happening for the last 3 or 4 years. Do you think the cycles are still intact? Do you think the era of the parabolas are over now that the institutions are here?
I would say everything has changed. And I go back to the ETFs. A large part of maybe that cyclical structure that we've seen is because when there is a large spike in demand and interest in Bitcoin, the exchanges have always been the bottleneck. Like, they would not be able to KYC people fast enough. And that is how you dull the rampant movement upwards, like Omega style candles. But now with the ETFs, that's not an issue. I think as we move to more in-kind issuances, the moves up are going to be more pronounced. And there's no barrier now, because the buying is aggregated. It's all aggregation. And that is because of the ETF. So I like to think of ETFs as a portal for capital to go into Bitcoin. And the portal is wide open now, and there's no limit to the throughput of that portal. All the traditional capital can come in. And then look at the Bitcoin treasury companies like Strategy. That's also another big portal too. They can tap into fixed income markets, the bond markets. And again, there is no bottleneck because the buying is aggregated. So I think it's just a matter of time. But I never really believed in the cycles. You can say that there is a cycle because there is the 4-year halving. And you can say there is a cycle because presidential elections are 4 years in the US, and that largely drives a lot of the cyclical nature of the markets. But the fact that we have 3 cycles doesn't mean anything. It's like you flip the coin 3 times and you got heads 3 times. Does that mean we're going to always have heads? No. So we'll probably see something change now because of all these structural market changes. And I think you're going to see like a super cycle, omega cycle, something where it's just moving differently and upwards.
Yeah. Does it concern you at all that, there's this centralization of the custody of Bitcoin with these ETFs? Like, I believe 11 out of the 12 ETFs all custody their Bitcoin with Coinbase. I think the only one that doesn't is Fidelity.
Well, the risk is to holders of those assets, to the holders of the ETFs and to Bitcoin treasury companies that are with that large provider. Because it's true, like if you're big and you have most of the Bitcoin, there is some risk that something could happen. But the risk is not to people that use Bitcoin in the better way. I wouldn't say the right way. The better way is self-custody. Having Bitcoin in your own hardware wallet, in your software wallet, just having your own Bitcoin. There is no risk to us if we have our own Bitcoin. The risk is to people that farm out the responsibility for the Bitcoin to another entity. Yeah. Trusted third parties are security holes.
Absolutely. Do you ever see a world where these, BlackRock is custodying their own Bitcoin?
I think you will see that because there is just such a level of risk. And I think that risk is largely created because the approvers, the SEC, they want to see something done in a way that is established and methodological. So they want to see that you have a good custodian, and then everyone is filing because quote unquote Coinbase is a good custodian and they're going with the gold standard. But now that they're approved, I think they can move if they choose to, or build their own custody solutions, which I think they will start to do because you'll have an upfront investment of a certain amount of money, but then you won't be paying Coinbase forever.
Yeah. Does it also concern you too, Samson, with the introduction of the ETFs and also the popularity of the ETFs? What we've seen is less people are actually taking custody of their coins.
I think it's a natural progression.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sort of like the survival of the fittest. The fittest will custody their own coins. Okay. Everyone else will, rely on a third party.
Uh-huh.
And that's normal. It's sort of like gold, right?
Yeah.
The origin of gold is you have your own gold. And because of convenience, you give it to someone else.
Yeah.
And I think there are things that wallet developers like ourselves and others can do that make it far easier, better ways of recovery of seed phrases, better backups, more robust backups. But by and large, there is a barrier to self-custody. And I think it's difficult to overcome because people are so accustomed to having their money in the bank and accustomed to looking at an app or a web page and seeing a number and thinking, oh, that's my number. And they just don't know or care enough to do something about that. And some people think it's a barrier, like it's a big learning curve to have a seed phrase. But as NVK says, if you can drive a car, you can back up 12 words. But it's just a mental block that I think stops people from doing it.
Yeah, of course. So Samson, with this new administration, you had a lot of talk. In fact, I think it was even promised about a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Here we are, I think 10 months later. Shout out to Senator Lummis. I think she's done an incredible job, and all the representatives and congressmen and women senators that have really pushed that initiative forward. Bo Hines, as well, that now is with Tether, but it seems like things stalled out a little bit. I don't know if you have more information regarding that. And is it even a good idea for countries to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve from the perspective of individuals?
Well, it's a double-edged sword. So the US has an SBR now, and they added to it from seizure.
Yeah.
And I think
they did. It was like a lot of Bitcoin.
$14 billion of Bitcoin. And that could be a dangerous thing. Like if you cannot pass legislation like Cynthia Lummis's Bitcoin Act to accumulate in a non-budget neutral way.
Well, technically it was a non-budget.
Yeah.
But right?
Seizures are non-budget neutral. Seizures are budget neutral, right? They didn't spend money on that.
Yeah.
And if they can only accumulate through seizures, then the motivation is to accumulate by seizing people's Bitcoin, which is not ideal. But I think Bitcoin is less prone to seizure than, say, gold or anything physical. But of course, we have big pots of Bitcoin with the custodians. But I think the goal should be that they accumulate through the Bitcoin Act in a non-budget neutral manner. And I think the slowdown really is just it takes time and the government shutdown as well, probably. But I think it will move forward because it's a necessity. If you look at the overall landscape, like why is the US so bullish on Bitcoin and unfortunately crypto and digital assets? I think it's a necessity. They need it because no one is buying treasuries anymore. The world is moving away from the dollar or trying to move away from the dollar, BRICS countries especially, and there just are no more buyers. And the traditional buyers are also having economic woes back home, right? So they need to have stablecoin issuers like Tether, that I think Tether is the 18th largest buyer if they were a country, to shore up demand. And I think $38 trillion in debt is not something that they can ignore for much longer. So they do need to build a Bitcoin reserve, a sizable one, to mitigate that debt, because people are kind of used to the number now, but 38 trillion is a crazy big number. And you're pretty bankrupt. And,
Yeah.
who wants to own more of your debt? I don't think it's possible to keep continuing it on that track. But also, just compounding of the interest is going to be ridiculous too. So something has to be done. And I think they realize the solution is Bitcoin.
Yeah. No, and Senator Lummis has that crystal clear, right? This is the solution to, the debt problem. And I had a very powerful conversation with her in DC earlier this year. And she was basically like, look, this is how my generation makes it up for your generation, right? Is through this strategic Bitcoin reserve. This is how the United States get out of debt. Now, thing is, maybe it's a little bit nihilistic of me, after living through 2008 and, seeing what has happened in the US and most countries around the world, they're spending more than they're, taking in revenue. What happens if the debt isn't paid? What happens when things eventually break? And how long will that take?
It's hard to say. I mean, the alternative to fixing it is a debt jubilee, a reset, a great fiat reset.
Yeah.
You could also have a rebasing to Bitcoin. You say the debt is redeemable for sats. But before you do that, you should have a nice big chunk of Bitcoin in your reserves. But it's difficult to say. I don't really know what's going to happen. Like, the fiat experiment has gone wildly out of control. And I think you could say the nature of democracy contributes to that, right? Like, the nature of democracy is people get free stuff.
Yeah.
And then they vote. And now it's the case in Canada. Like, why are the Liberals still in power? Because a lot of the older generation that get a lot of free things kept them in power. So it's sort of a question. We're at a crossroads right now. Where do we go? And it's hard to say. We can go on to a Bitcoin standard and I think repair a lot of that damage, or things get dark and the government needs to feed itself. They need money and they're going to get money by any means possible. Now, there's an opportunity there too, which is you can wean them off the money printing by getting them to mine Bitcoin. And we have a really good example of that today, which is Bhutan. They have over $1 billion of Bitcoin. They're building a new airport from their Bitcoin holdings. And they've shown that stranded energy, excess energy, converts to money. These are things that I've been saying for years, and now there's a very pertinent, very tangible example of it. And we were in Paraguay. We did a presentation and we met with the government there. Hopefully they could do something. We ran a calculation. Every year they're just running off 1,200 to 1,400 Bitcoin.
Yeah, the Itapu Dam.
Yeah.
Biggest dam in the world.
But it's the same for Canada. There's a massive amount of hydropower that's just run off or sold at a deep discount to the US. But many countries have excess or untapped energy, and they could easily tap that, just as Middle Eastern countries tap the oil reserves and sell that.
Yeah.
Now you can turn water into money.
Yeah.
Do you need liquidity without having to sell your Bitcoin? For more than 6 years now, Ledn has been the trusted source for Bitcoin-backed lending, with transparency, security, and trust at their core. Backed by $9 billion of Bitcoin loans funded and over 1,000 5-star reviews. I absolutely love these guys because of their flexibility. You can pay back your loan whenever you want. And there are no monthly payments, so you pay at the end of the term. You get lightning fast access to capital. As soon as you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you get the cash into your account within 18 hours. Unlock the liquidity of your Bitcoin without having to sell your Bitcoin. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 0.25% off their first loan by using the link in the video/podcast description. What are you waiting for? Check out Ledn today.
So a big debate right now that's going on in the community, Samson, is the knots versus core. It's been very divisive, to say the least, and people feel very strongly about both sides. I've tried to take the most neutral stance as possible, but it's very hard when you get DMs from predominant Bitcoiners saying, if you don't take a stance, you will forever regret, or something like that. Pick a side, basically. So I want to get your take on that, man, because, it is a very complex subject and very predominant members of the community feel very strongly about one side or the other.
Well, it's very natural that happens. I think when you mess with someone's money, they get angry, right? And Bitcoin is your money, it's my money, it's a lot of plebs out there. Their life savings are in this and it has to work. And when you feel someone is mucking around with it, changing it, allowing it to be turned into something else, then emotions run high and people get upset and things are said that might be inciting more anger or, just lashing out at people viciously. And we're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's healthy. I think we should be de-escalating and figuring out how we move forward. But I think one interesting thing that seems to be an agreement point is that we should do something about it. We should figure out some sort of proposal. I think it's probably going to be a soft fork that limits spam. And I believe there's enough appetite from all parties to put something serious forward and fix things at a consensus level rather than at the policy level.
Interesting. So that's the first time I heard about the why do you believe it's going to be some type of soft fork that's going to be proposed?
Well, policy only works if everyone agrees on the policy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being bypassed right now because it's not uniformly enforced. So people that want to spam the networks, they can go directly to a big mining pool that wants to mine big pictures and it'll go in the chain. And I think a lot of these policy things were implemented in the past because everyone was kind of acting as on their best behavior and in the best interest of the network. So we all follow these policy rules, which are sort of like guidelines for how you should behave. But if someone's breaking those rules and it's inciting other people to break them too, then the policy stops working.
Absolutely.
So we kind of have to fix it at a consensus level. And I think there is more or less a unanimous agreement that we don't want spam and that Bitcoin is money. This has been an arguing point back and forth. People were saying the core side don't think Bitcoin is money, but then some of them came out and said, yes, I do believe it's money. But there's such a level of nuance to this that a lot of the argumentative points are lost or miscommunicated or talking past each other, because another facet is people are saying, you can't stop spam absolutely, but I don't think anything can really stop spam completely 100%. And then like Adam is saying, well, we can't stop it, so we shouldn't bother stopping it. But I think he's coming around. We had a discussion today, and I think he also thinks we should do a soft fork to limit at the consensus level. So maybe we're able to move past this, but a lot of people are angry at this. I was at angry and confused. I was at a BitFX Securities event, and we're talking about securities and tokenized equities and whatnot. And we asked for questions from the audience, and one guy's question is, well, what about the core knots and spam and op returns?
It's like, what does this have to do with anything?
Yeah, because people are worried about that, right? And I think it's better if we do de-escalate, we stop being inflammatory and we work on a real solution, because everyone does want something. Like if you look at knots, they want spam to stop. Yeah. They want filters. And if filters don't work at the node level that effectively, then it should be at the consensus level. And from my own personal view, I've always thought we should have done it at consensus. I've never said we run the filters and, filter harder, because it's not absolute. It's still bypassable.
So I guess my next question is like a natural question, which is, who determines what is to be filtered and what is not to be filtered? Because I feel like that's a very slippery slope.
It's a question of what is spam. And I think we agree what spam is, but it is a slippery slope and it is not clear. Like, is it someone sticking a JPEG or an inscription? Is it a layer 2 anchor, like Citria BitVM type of anchor? Or is it, I don't know, a counterparty Omni transaction that's anchoring too? And there are varying degrees of understanding and agreement of what is spam. But by and large, I think the definition of spam is it's something you don't want, right? People have said before, the spammers are paying fees, therefore it is not spam. But I think that's a very weak and false argument, because you get a piece of spam mail, they paid the postage. Like, it's still spam because you don't want it, right?
Yeah.
So it's really, what do people not want? And I think we have to kind of distill to a certain level that it is probably the scammy things.
Yeah.
Maybe not layer 2 anchors, But also there was that whole argument before, like everything is data. Bitcoin is data. But I think you have to also separate out what is Bitcoin itself. If you download the Bitcoin client and you send me a Bitcoin transaction, let's say it's 2009 and you're like one of the first miners and you mine 50 coins and you send me one, that's the data. The data is the native thing of the network, which is Bitcoin. It's not anchoring something else. But I think we largely agree anchoring a little bit of data for a layer 2 or something is.
But you see what I mean? Like it's like it's like, okay, so it's basically JPEGs, images, no, anything related to money that allows kind of like the scaling of Bitcoin is more acceptable. Now, my follow-up question to that, Samson, is there was so much pressure on social media against the core team, right? Like clearly the community was saying, hey guys, like we don't want this.
Yeah.
I would say the overwhelming majority were saying this is probably not a good idea. Why do you think they didn't listen? And then the follow-up question to that is it a good idea that they have so much power that they can just, basically ignore what the community is trying to tell them?
So it's such a complicated topic. So from their point of view, I've read, it's like they should not bow to pressure from the outside, which is basically everyone that's not a core contributor and developer. I mean, you could argue, like, what is that line even? Because there are people that kind of talk a lot, but don't write code either. They're kind of theory crafters, but they still seem to have weight in what they say too, right? But I think their prevailing concept was, because you're a pleb and you say something, you're non-technical, we should not change what we do because you're not qualified. And that angered a lot of people, of course, but that was kind of a message that they delivered. And I think that is what drove a lot of the animosity towards core, just the arrogance and the attitude towards the ordinary user and the ease of which they disparaged the average user because it felt like they looked down on them. But I think at the crux of it, they're saying technically the decision is sound. We want to align policy and consensus. And we don't know what the right limit is. Therefore, there should be no limit. Because if we set it to 160 for Citria, maybe in the future we need 200 and want to change it again. So let's just get rid of it. That's me trying to steel man that argument. And I don't think it's the right way. I think even Adam has said it should have been 160 or something reasonable, not just removing the limit outright. But from their point of view, it's like we have to not listen or else we'll show that core can be influenced by outside forces. Which leads into your next question. Should that even be the case? And I think no. I think it is a very healthy thing that knots exist and there is an alternate. And I think even if there was a third major implementation, that would be even better. So it would sort of mirror what Lightning is. There's 3 major Lightning implementations. There's CLN, Eclair, and LND, or Core Lightning. They rebranded. But they largely have to agree before the Lightning protocol moves forward. And I think if you had 3 major core implementations, all based off of the original Satoshi code base, and all 3 kind of have to agree, then Bitcoin is far safer because core cannot unilaterally set a default. Because if you take it to the extreme, and let's say they somehow reached a decision that we need a tail emission, which Peter Todd is champion for, and you say, no, like that's inflation, it's 21 million. And they say, no, technical reasons, blah, 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 it has to be done. And everyone gets up in arms again. Let's say this is in 30 years. And they say, well, we can't listen because if we listen, we're being influenced by the outside. Then that's also not great too. Yeah. So I think the best thing is there are 3 major clients. We largely have to agree between them before things change. Policy doesn't matter as much because it's policy of one, not of the whole network. And we largely ossify, and Bitcoin kind of gets bug fixes and security fixes, and no one's kind of using it as a research playground for layer 2s and zero knowledge proofs and things like that. But ossification is a sort of a loaded word. People say, we can't ossify because we'll need to do things. But I think it's largely understood that when we say we should ossify, we stop adding new features and bells and whistles, and we just fix the security issues and very, very core issues that are relevant. Maybe quantum. I don't think quantum is a threat, but eventually maybe we need to do something, and that is something that should be fixed.
Yeah. So basically it's like, look, focus on, yes, if things are to be fixed, if things are to be changed, it's just to maintain Bitcoin as money.
Yes.
right? We don't want this as, as you said, as a playground. We don't want this as research. We don't want to be putting up JPEGs like, this is sound money. This is the best money the world has ever seen. We want hyper Bitcoinization.
Yeah.
What the F are you guys doing? Stop playing around type of thing, right?
Yeah. The thing is, like, the funding mechanisms, I think, for Bitcoin Core are kind of a bit off. Developers get grants to work on whatever they feel like working on.
Oh, wait. Are we going down this rabbit hole?
If you want.
Where are the grants coming from, Samson?
I don't know. There are many organizations funding, but the funding is no strings attached, and you kind of just get to do whatever you want. So everyone wants to work on really cool stuff. There's less incentive to fix the bugs and do the boring things. Like, if you think about it, fighting spam is not something that someone wants to do, right? You have to understand that Core is an organization based on merit, supposedly. At least that's what everyone says. But there's a human element to it, right? Not everyone's going to want to work on Core forever. They might want to make a name for themselves, build something cool, get a job somewhere else in 5 years. But is that the best thing for the Bitcoin network, that everyone's working on really cool, esoteric, very advanced cryptographic things? Or is it better that we get bugs fixed? So I think the funding and allocation of funds has to be fixed as well. And maybe we'll see funding come to knots for that. I think Dennis Porter is working on something. And maybe there will be a third implementation that also has funding for more boring things like fixing bugs and testing.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store.
So we had a fantastic interview on Volcano earlier this year.
Yes, we did.
And here we are, I think it's like 10 months later, 9 months later. And this is the year after the halving. Historically, price tends to run up and Bitcoin's become like a stable coin. The volatility is really, decreased tremendously. What's the deal with that?
I think
we were talking about $1 million Omega candles.
It's all happening. It's just a matter of time. I think there are a number of things happening. Maybe it's the shakeout recently. We dropped 20K.
Yeah.
And that's kind
of... We got the major candle just in the wrong direction.
But you can see, like, the volatility has declined a lot. Like, I think that was the largest flush ever of liquidations. That largest flush ever of liquidations. And all we did was drop 20. Altcoins dropped, down to the 90%. Depths of hell.
Yeah.
But, Bitcoin largely unaffected. And it goes to show, like, the resilience is there. It's just there are factors that will push us down or keep us down. You can theorize about many things, but maybe it's not one answer. It's many different things. Maybe there is an exchange selling Bitcoin that they don't have, like FTX did. Maybe it is some paper Bitcoin. Maybe it's whales rotating. Maybe it's people moving into ETFs. I don't know. Maybe there's people taking profits. All of these things can be possible. We don't know. But what we do know is there is a limit. And what we do know is it's impossible that Michael Saylor gets 10% of the supply. At these levels, he's going to get 10%. Like, that's just ridiculous. So the price has to move sooner or later. And I think it's going to be sooner. The other thing probably is, like, alts were running too hot. Ethereum was, like, getting past its all-time highs. Ripple is at like $3.50, which is ridiculous. And I think when alts run too high, there's always a correction. And I've after our Volcano interview, I kind of flipped bearish because the alts were running. And we just know, like, that is unsustainable. And when they go, Bitcoin always will follow down a bit, but then we kind of shake them off and we go back up.
Yeah. And they never recover, right?
Yes.
So, Samson, we are getting to the end, but we saw the sunset, while we were recording this. Timed it perfectly.
Yeah.
We saw a wild Bevan dolphin, which was hilarious.
It's not a volcano, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, this is good. I want to ask you, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now, how do you want to be remembered? What is Samson's legacy? What is the Jan 3 legacy?
Well, hopefully we actually do get Bitcoin bonds launched. I think that will be a big game changer for the world. It's showing that the strategy playbook, which has worked, will work for nation states. I think the question will really be, as we transition from the fiat world into a Bitcoin world, did it go well or did it go poorly? And if it goes well, I would like to be remembered as someone that pushed it on the track to going well.
I love that. Samson Mow, thank you so
Nico,
much.
thank
Appreciate
you.
it.